Very good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. If I can just come to attention, there we go. Well, actually, you're a chatty lot, so I hope that means lots of good questions coming. Nice to see you all. Welcome to the AI Imperative, getting ready for Workforce 2.0. And we're going to be looking at the impact of artificial intelligence on jobs and the workforce. We know it is going to be a period of epic change. I mean, I think that's sort of reflected by our agenda this morning. So thank you to Ashram Rachu of Academy and Saul Klein of Local Globe for hosting this event. I'm Michael Heyman. I'm chair and co-founder of Seven Hills. I'm going to be your MC for this morning. I'm also co-author, of a book called Mission, which we wrote for Penguin. Even in this digital age, I'm like to assure you that if you go around to Waterstones just around the corner, it is available at that and all other quality retail bookstores, so don't worry about that. It's also, do anybody know what today is? We're opposite the Crick Institute here. It's National Science Appreciation Day, which is a great day to be holding an event like this on. And I think that we should show some appreciation for our speakers this morning. So anybody up for a big round of applause to get us going? Yes, let's do it. Yes. Well, that was... Now, listen, I will tell you, not that I want to shame you, we are live streaming this. So if I was hearing this on a sort of really bad audio, I'd be going, what's going on in there? Is it a funeral or is it a party? Let's try again on 3. Let's try something a bit more, with a bit more gusto. I mean, you can use a bit of voice energy. Think of the digitization that might go on in the future. They might look back at this moment and see, could machines do better than human beings at this particular point in time? So for the sake of humanity, I'd say, let's give it the best you've got. Right, so on 3, let's go again. 1, 2, 3, yes, please. Right, now, I was doing my research for this morning, and I was looking at what have the great minds said about the effect of artificial intelligence. I was particularly drawn to Demis Hassabis, the DeepMind co-founder, who basically put it like this. And I think that you have to be particularly well regarded and intelligent to get away with a comment like this, when he said that AI will either be the best or the worst thing ever for humanity. So there you go. I think that's our starting point. It could be great, it could be brilliant, or maybe not. And I suppose feeling how you feel about technology and how you feel about this change is a big part of how you will approach this whole debate. So I suppose those that think it could be the best, let's quick show of hands. There we go. I think, yes, lots of shreddies in the audience there, lots of good stars. Those think it could be the worst. Okay, right, well, there's, yes, a minority, but a minority report nonetheless that will keep us going in this conversation, because AI promises to revolutionize just about everything in the way we live, work, and interact. I mean, it's really interesting in a week where we've been looking at big medical stories, the role of, in public life that is, the role of AI software in detecting everything from cancers to abnormalities on chest x-rays, major sorts of speed ups in the way that health can be changed by artificial intelligence. But at the same time, if you look at reports from, I suppose, the big business minds in this, Goldman Sachs estimates that AI could very soon replace the equivalent of 300 million full-time jobs. And of course, that could bring absolute chaos unless the historic turn of the technological wheel, as it has done in the past, creates more jobs than it loses. Because what we know is that in 1940, well, 60% of the jobs that are done today didn't exist. So people in the 40s would have thought that actually new jobs will be a long way down the line, but actually they were right. Actually, what we're now talking about is this deeply accelerated timeline where actually getting ready for these new jobs of the future is no moot point, because there's an excellent US Department of Labor study that says, that estimates that roughly 2/3 of the roles that kids in US primary schools today are going to take on those job descriptions don't even exist yet. And I think that is, that kind of thing about, they call the future the undiscovered country. Well, that undiscovered jobs of the future is such an interesting part of today's debate. And Demi Hassabas's co-founder, Andrew Ng, said that just as electricity transformed almost everything 100 years ago, today I actually have a hard time thinking of an industry that I don't think AI will transform in the next several years. So everybody's in the same boat in terms of how we get ready for something that is going to be transformative and changing, but doing it safely. And of course, the UK wants to have a piece of the action. It's here to see whether it can make itself a kind of AI superpower. We'll be talking about that in the discussion. But I suppose also, in looking at Academy's tagline there, make potential count. I think making potential count in an AI era is a great sort of, I suppose, subheading for what we're going to be talking about today. We've got an hour of brilliant content to discuss with people at the forefront of AI developments, from a business perspective through to a policy perspective. We're going to hear from organizations including HSBC, Dell Technologies, former advisors to the government on AI, and DeepMind scientists. Now, if you plan to share any content today, the hashtag is #TheAIimperative. We're also live streaming, so welcome to those that are watching this online. And we've got an absolutely brilliant summit of conversation to sort of share with you this morning. And to kick us off, reminding ourselves that it is that Appreciation Day for Science. It's a great pleasure, therefore, to welcome one of the great science and technology minds in this debate, the co-founder and CEO of Academy, Ashram Rachia. He's also the host this morning. Academy works with tech businesses to help them fill their vacancies with high potential people from non-STEM backgrounds. I mean, and that's the key point, right, is we're going to need a lot of people with non-STEM backgrounds to actually fill the gap in the process of helping them and the wider tech sector become more diverse and representative of the UK. So pleased to give a very warm welcome to Ashram Rachia.
Hi, morning everyone. Lovely to see you all here, and it's always reassuring when you're in the good hands of Mike, so thank you for that. And thanks for joining me. I think this is the third event I've hosted or put together on this topic in the last sort of 12 months or so. Clearly, as Michael just said, it's a sort of transformative force, and a lot of the future is a little bit uncertain. And what we wanted to do is bring a wide cross-section of different voices and insights to this discussion. So in the room today, we have policymakers, media, business leaders from the FTSE 100, technology founders from startups. We have people doing some jobs of the future, just starting to cross the divide, and almost everyone in between. And it's a bit of a personal quest by me to get my head around what is really going on and how should we prepare. And I think maybe that's why you've joined as well, to just try and get some sort of additional insight. But I have a particular fascination about the impact of work and jobs and the labor market at large. And I think there's a sort of twin challenge, a duality to this. As AI transforms almost every industry, you potentially could see this interesting twin challenge of companies struggling to acquire the skills they need to stay competitive in this new world, but increasingly workers struggling to access the opportunities they need to stay relevant. And how can we make those two things meet? Because there's a danger that everyone could be left behind, and it's a sort of uneven impact. As current trends kind of continue to play out, this disproportionate impact, it's sort of women and minorities who are at most risk today of being displaced, and are also in acute shortage in the sort of jobs of the future as it stands. Our systems today for how we think about preparing our workforce, our education systems, our training systems, our hiring systems are already struggling with previous technology disruptions. They're slightly outdated. They sort of limit or hinder the ability of people to show their true potential, and it's leading to severe representation issues already in technology. So the stakes are quite high, but so is the potential for massive positive impacts. And this is the thing I'm most interested in. Could AI be a democratizer of opportunity, or could it continue to fuel the divide that we already see in the workforce? And that's our mission at Academy. It's really to make potential count, to use the advances in technology to democratize opportunity for a wide range of people. And we're working with some tremendous organizations, large and small, to try and rewire people from the declining jobs of the past into the future growth opportunities in technology and beyond. And it feels like the sort of AI revolution is probably the central pillar of this work over the next decade. There's almost nothing that's more important for the team and I to be focused on over the next decade or two. But to kick us off, we're going to have a brilliant discussion. We've got a fantastic panel.
We're going to move on to our first panel that's going to look at how we can upskill the UK in its ambition to become what Rishi Sunak described as a science and technology superpower by 2030. To tell us their views about our chances of that, and also the adoption of AI more sort of generally in the UK workforce. Great pleasure. Therefore, I'll just introduce the panel in one go and then ask them all to come up. Adrian Joseph, who is formerly the AI officer for Google, EY, UK AI Council he served on, and also BT Group, as well as an expert member of the UK AI Council. Ash Ramrachi, who we've heard from, is going to give a perspective, not only from Academy, but I suppose more generally also on the preparedness of the UK to fulfill its tech vacancies. Margaretta McGrath is an advisory and strategic partner lead at Dell Technologies, the household name in technology, but also one which is focused on creating innovative technologies for customers and businesses that drive human progress. And Roshni Haywood is the global head of human resources, digital business services at HSBC, the global bank which is focused on creating an inclusive, health and rewarding environment to attract, develop and retain the best talent. The exam question is, what work can we do now to prepare the UK workforce for AI and enable the UK to be a leader in AI? I'm pleased to give them a warm welcome. Great. Okay. Sort of feels like we could almost be like kind of Eurovision Song Contest, sort of like band. I mean, I'll do vocals. Right. Okay. So I thought really, we'll start, Margaret, we'll start at the end and we'll work our way through. But I mean, a very interesting speech there from Michael. I mean, that sort of the idea of the, what's the new American high school movement? I thought, in a very sort of, I suppose, positive speech about the potential for human progress in a moment where we might have more time than we think we have. Where are we on a new curve in terms of your view from Dell's perspective, Margaretta, in terms of being ready to adopt transformative technologies?
Yeah, well, first of all, look, fantastic to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Michael, and wonderful to hear from Michael and from Ash this morning. I think from our perspective, from a Dell, from a hardware infrastructure side, we're excited around where this is going to go, and we're seeing lots of initiatives by both large and small organizations and enterprise organizations right now driving either proof of concepts or large-scale AI programs. I think, and we're excited, but we're also, and I heard Michael loud and clear around tempering the excitement a little bit around there's a period of adjustment. And I think, Ash, you touched on the words about rewiring as well. And I do think we're going to go into a period of adjustment or readjustment, whether it's on things like data governance, data ethics, security. So there's such a rush at the moment in terms of AI programs and initiatives and pilots everywhere in all kinds of organizations. But I actually think there's going to be a recalibration at some point in time where organizations say, okay, we're just going to level set and set some standards and some governance models. And right now there's an excitement, but I do think we're going in for a period of quite significant adjustment over the next while where things are going to settle right? We're going to say, okay, this is how we're going to adopt AI programs and initiatives across organizations. And this is the maturity that we're going to look at around data management, around security, around ethics that's going to come through, around diversity and inclusion as well, to make sure that we democratize this. So excitement, but it's a bit tempered, Michael.
Right, okay. And we'll come back to how excited should we be. But Roshni, I mean, it was interesting hearing Michael talk about that kind of 60s fear of the human psyche. But in fact, every decade has that. I mean, I remember seeing an amazing advertisement at the time of Excel coming out. It was showing actually on Madison Avenue how you could get rid of literally hundreds of accountants, and that was celebrated at the time the world over. Has anything changed? That's not the question, of course, but I mean, but this issue in terms of actually we are going to see this disruption. Some people are rightly very fearful about it. How do you see the disruption inside a major global organization like HSBC, and do you approach it with a glass half full or glass half empty mentality?
Yeah, no, again, thank you for inviting me here. So fascinating kind of discussion already. I think HSBC, big organization, and to be honest, we have been doing AI for a few years. But I think the way we see at the moment, there is excitement, and I think our employees there's a lot of innovation happening, across the organisation, but we're also balancing it with a risk and ethics kind of responsible sort of AI kind of perspective as well. So I think we're kind of, keeping the balance, but I think the main thing what we're trying to do is kind of develop our people, and get them ready, because of course, from a, leading HR, from a people perspective, we are planning the work, we're doing a lot of workforce planning, looking 5 years ahead, and we see declining skills, there's increasing skills. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we prepare our employees, for that, being ready really for the skills development. So there's a lot of training we're doing, we're making it available to people, and then many people are adopting it at speed, really, depending on how curious they are.
Right, now we're going to go out to questions shortly. And we've had some questions in advance, which I'll see if we've got people here. Also, if you're watching this live stream, do send in things via LinkedIn, and we'll keep an eye out for that. And hashtag the AI imperative to sort of take part in that conversation. Do share your views as well, and we'll do a little bit of polling. Actually, we heard a lot there about the kind of, I suppose, highly skilled disruption. But what about the wider UK economy? I mean, what does it have to look for? And in fact, the global economy, what does it have to look forward to in this new disruptive age?
Well, I mean, in the UK, we've struggled with low productivity for decades, probably since the 70s. At the same time, there's been an incredible decline in companies and industries investing in their own workforce. So it's kind of fallen off a cliff. And the job of preparing people for high-skilled work, as Mike was pointing out, was the sort of reserve of education, the sort of the universities and so on. And in my experience, that system is sort of creaking a bit, because the technology advances in the last 15 years or so creating huge demand for highly skilled roles, but this perennial cry from companies that there's a big shortage. There's just not enough people. It's very difficult. It's slow to hire. And on top of that, it's almost impossible to build a team that's representative of society because of those issues. And what I kind of look forward to is could AI make this different in the future? Is it possible now to sort of take someone from a non-traditional background and really equip them to use some of the technologies, the co-pilot technologies, and could they produce the same output as someone with higher skills? And could that open up opportunity? Because frankly, we need to take more people into higher paid work to get this productivity going. I think that's the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Adrian, I was reading that this debate is often sort of typified by what's been described as techno-fantasists and techno-fatalists. You either see that actually the lights are going to go red and it's going to be the end of times, or actually this is a new renaissance, a new moment. I mean, Ash has laid out there, I suppose, the opportunity. We're all walking around with supercomputers in our pockets, this moment of change. You've advised a lot of different companies. How prepared do you think business is for the change that's going to be fostered upon it?
My view is that we're not at all prepared. I mean, there's a massive difference between you know, the large technology companies, some of which I've worked for in the past too, we've been in the midst of a talent arms race for over 10 years now. And the big technology companies understood that. You know, they were either acquiring organizations like DeepMind or hiring or reskilling. And, you know, they're very different to most of the FTSE 100s or 200s that I see. It is really, really hard to convince somebody, you know, to join a legacy FTSE business and to drag them away from optimizing clicks, likes, or tweets. And how do you do that? Well, I think you have to have a really, really compelling vision and a purpose that, you know, appeals to a wider audience, that enables us, because we can't compete with the cash that, you know, Michael just described, right? We can't pay those sorts of levels. But, you know, to succeed, we do need to be able to tell a story of why this matters, and to be able to disrupt an organization at the core that might be 180 years old. To be involved in that is a massive opportunity. I remember when I was on the board of the Home Office, there was a professor from Cambridge University in mathematics, and he was the chief scientific officer for the Home Office. Thinking, why are you doing this, right? You could like earn 20 times what you're doing here. But, you know, he had a passion for what the Home Office was trying to achieve, and so we need to build these credible stories about why it really matters. And, you know, it's a wonderful career to optimize clicks and likes and tweets, but you can have amazing, and I did it, right? But you can have an alternative career that is immensely rewarding in other businesses.
But think about triggers for change. They can often be typified as fear or opportunity.
Yep.
What's going to be the tipping point, do you think, to actually get AI taken seriously?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's actually demonstrating the value. So, you know, I spend a lot of time thinking about where's the money? You know, show me the pot of gold, right? And so in order to do that, you need to activate the whole organization. You need to engage with the domain experts in the consumer side of the business, the B2B business, HR, finance. You need to be able to show, look at those use cases that are going to really, really transform the way in which we operate and work. And so being able to do that, you know, really, really well. And so having joint teams that understand the art of the possible with the right blend of technologists, I think is, and fixating on big problems that are really going to change the world. I think that's the way that you get around this.
Right, Roshni. So what Adrian's given us there is the 21st century of the Jerry Maguire call out of show me the money. Have you got a business case for AI at HSBC? And if so, do you want to share it with us?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, you know, we've got a very kind of clear purpose at HSBC, but our main one is about digitizing at scale. And I'm sort of heading up the kind of HR sort of area for that. And I think the AI and the purpose around the digitizing at scale for our customers is kind of critical, and AI is kind of front and center of that. So what we're kind of trying to do with our people is really kind of then develop our people and train them, really develop our internal skills, and also supplement that with external skills to help us really kind of, you know, do that at pace, basically, and partner with a number of organizations.
Right, and Margareta, when you hear our Prime Minister talk about the UK as a science and technology superpower, so actually looking at, I mean, with all of the connotations that means, and to be that way by 2030, is that hype, or do you sense that there might be something in it?
No, I think there genuinely is something in it. I think the pace of development that's going on in the UK, particularly with academia, with some of the policymakers right now, and even the startup scene, actually we're seeing it's quite unprecedented. And I've got a global role at Dell, but actually I'm seeing more growth right now in the UK and more innovation. I do want to just go back to one of Adrian's points, which I think was excellent, which is we are seeing a significant move at the moment around shadow AI, right? So it's almost, you can't temper this down, right? It's happening in all parts of the organization. And actually there is excitement, and it's trying to find whether it is that shadow AI, which is a challenge, but actually trying to find out those examples, those use cases, and saying, actually, this is the value of it, right? And holding it up. I think that will drive also greater understanding and awareness of it too, right? So, but back to the point, Michael, yes, absolutely. I think that the UK, you know, it's on track to be a leading innovator around AI and leader actually globally on this.
So Ash, pick that up for us. I mean, if we go to, I suppose, our exam question in terms of what should we do to upskill the UK in its ambition in this place? If you were making the call out in terms of the what happens now, what happens next, what would your in a nutshell sort of call out be?
What a question.
It is the question, right?
I'm not sure anyone has an answer to that question narrowly, but I guess the only thing I spend my life obsessing about is how does this create opportunity for people?
Yeah.
And I'm an optimist at heart, and technology has been a huge force for progress in my own life, but I sort of have some concerns about whether the disruption, although I'm reassured when I listen to Mike and his case for why things don't often roll out. If you're a worker today in a job that is sort of high exposure data, let's say customer services or whatever, where we're seeing announcement after announcement about these sort of automation systems, the way you feel about your life and your career, your prospects, your opportunity set has just got narrower in a 5-year horizon. That's fact today. And if you think about the impacts on that person and the household, I mean, I can go back to when I was growing up. My parents were from humble origins, and Dad was an immigrant from Mauritius. He was a bus driver, and my mum was a secretary. And I grew up on a council estate, and for a period of time, and you had this sort of yellow token you had to give in to get your free school meal. And at the time, I just didn't want to give my token in and actually get the free school meal, because there was this stigma. This idea that this was a temporary situation in life. Our parents are ambitious, and this, we want to move onwards and upwards. And I think almost every person has that sort of desire to get ahead in life. And if you think about the impacts of that at scale in households where potentially the opportunity set is just getting narrower, I think we have a moral and social and also economic imperative as employers and sort of industry at large to think about how we can open up these very compelling growth opportunities to the broadest section of people. That doesn't answer your question, man. That's the thing.
But I think it does.
Totally obsessed by.
I think it's a good segue into Adrian, which is, I suppose, this issue about mobility, about upside. I interviewed Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia, and he talked about his generation of technologists. He said, when we created social media, he said it was going to be the new Athens. It was going to democratize the world in one quick step. And of course, you look at the news from X yesterday in terms of the drop-off, the decline in trust. I mean, here we've got a brand new shiny technology that could be transformative, that could provide the social mobility on steroids that Ash is talking about. How do we get it right?
Another huge, how do we get that right? So, I mean, there are a number of things. I mean, we need to get the balance right in terms of making sure that we have all stakeholders involved. So it has to be, a blend of public sector, of private sector, of academia, of civil society. It's really, really important for all of us to have a voice in how the future that we want to see and how that's going to develop. I'm intrigued to see the audience here today, by the way. It's so much more diverse than did anybody see the Tech Nation 50 list?
Yeah.
Did you see that picture?
Yeah.
There were 3 women on it. There was not a black person on it. And if that's the future, then I think we've missed a real opportunity. So
and that's the danger, right?
That is a huge danger that we don't pull people along. So, and then I think about 3 A's for the world of work, right? The world of work is going to be very different. We will have jobs that will be entirely automated, that are repeatable tasks, that are predictable, that are, high data entry. But all of us will be augmented in one way or another, even our CEOs and boards. And I can imagine having an algorithm on a board. Probably there's some already. And then the third area, I think, is about what are the additional jobs that we're going to see, right? So prompt engineering, of course, is a big one. But there are many others. We're going to need AI fluency coaches. We're going to need business translators. We're going to need more ethicists.
Right.
And so making sure we understand that the blend of skills is not just technical. It has to be a much broader socio-economic mix than we perhaps thought about so far.
Right, we're going to get to a bit of polling and a few questions that I think are really relevant to this. Because, I suppose they speak to trust and adoption. When I think about being personally augmented, I'd say good luck with that for any program. But similarly, it's one of those things that I think a lot of people feel, even the language feels quite artificial. Well, maybe we should like it. So this is good. I suppose on that basis, good to have these 2 questions, because I suppose question 1 is, could you raise your hand if you think we have a long way to go in terms of public understanding about how AI can indeed positively impact the workforce? So I suppose how far along the curve, if you think we've got a long way to go, quick show of hands. right, pretty much everyone, right? So we might want to come back to that. Even the panelists are agreeing. So I think we might want to come back to that. And raise your hand if on a kind of micro level, if you think your business has an accepting and positive culture around AI. So those that think they're working in, I suppose, AI progressive businesses. So quick show of hands. About half. And those that think they aren't? There we go. Right. Okay. So, and there's a lot of people that think I've got my review next week, so I'm not going to tell you one way or the other. Right. We've got questions from a number of people. So I'm just going to quickly call out. If you're here, call out the question, and let's try and keep them relatively short. And if you're not, I'm going to basically just pitch the questions as I've got them. But Rachel Wilkinson, Global HR BP, are you here? Rachel, do you want to ask your question about your 2 or 3 things?
Yeah, so, thank you very much. That's great. Hi. So what 2 or 3 things would you recommend that businesses do to demystify AI for all the teams in the workplace? So to start the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Roshni, should we go to you for that? Yep.
Yep. So I think, one thing I would just say is maybe just make like training available. And kind of maybe sort of segment it into different personas. Some people are kind of very curious, some people are experts, and kind of just like kind of tailor it to people's sort of the audience effectively. So I think that's one thing from a training education perspective. I think the other thing is just, and what we've done this at HSBC as well, we've just allowed sort of from a bottoms-up approach, like an ambassadors. We've got like an AI ambassadors sort of network that has kind of developed. And basically, it's people that are very interested, and then they're kind of really supporting each other and really kind of, driving the movement, if you like, through the bank. So there would be just 2 things I would suggest.
Ash, have you got a perspective on this?
I do, but I think Adrian's might be a bit sharper.
Okay, Adrian, right.
So I would just say, like, there's a ton of AI in our lives right now on our mobile phones in terms of, Google search or Netflix recommendations. All of the software that's optimized on here is AI enabled. All of the hardware is AI enabled. So it is all around us. So I think we need to tell a better story about how AI is part of our lives. It is already augmenting us, right? And the other ways in which it could do it, if you're in the software engineering space, large language models, have the opportunity to take maybe 40% of some of the less enjoyable work out of that. 40% efficiency from, software engineering, supply chain re-engineering using large language models. And, I would say many of us are doing things that we really, weren't designed for us, right? The algorithms can do it more effectively, and we can spend our time doing more value-added stuff. So I think there's a huge piece around education, of helping people understand that it's all around us. One of the things I observe about AI is once it's become part of our lives, it's not called AI any longer, right? It's not a recommendation, and it's
the stuff that makes life better.
Exactly. It's now called something else. It's a spam filter or recommendation engine or something else. So once AI becomes part of our lives, it's called something else, and so we move on and think it's this other thing that's this sort of scientific thing that's going to come and get us and disrupt the world potentially. This dystopian view.
Yeah, Margaret, have you got a perspective?
Which is on cyber, just from a data management perspective, is just putting down some guidelines around what data is going to be released out there in terms of prompts, because actually people are using it without even realizing they're revealing, personal information or careful information, and they need to be careful about that. So I think just a standard around that, and again, Adrian's point around the education and awareness. Roshni, you touched on the coaching and mentoring. We have a reverse mentoring program that we've set up, and it's actually working quite well, where some of our more younger talent are kind of coaching some of our more mature workforce, and actually it's working pretty well. So, and it's a bit of fun as well, and it's driving a kind of a bit of a cultural shift around it.
Roshni, I mean, this thing about language is quite important, isn't it? Because we're not talking about the language of programming, we're talking about the language of trust and belief and how you actually bring people with you. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, look, I think the culture and the psychological safety piece is absolutely critical, I think, to the sort of implementation of AI and in an organisation. So I think the main thing is just to be open, transparent, communicate, and let people know what's coming, and let them be part of the journey kind of with you. But it is here,
Right. Okay, I'm just going to go out to, we've got Shona Moylan from BP here. Shona, you're here? Yeah, just if you could we have your question on your first question, please?
Thank you. Good morning. So we had a number of questions, but we're going to go with this one. The top business schools offer You want the first one? We're going to change our question. We can give you all three if you want.
I mean, I feel like a version of Chat GPT with the amount of questions we've got. But come on, let's have it quickly.
How do you see the growth of AI impacting on gender equality within organisations?
Yeah, I think gender, and I'd sort of extend that to wider diversity challenges. Ash, I'm going to come to you for an answer on this one.
Well, I mean, it's a good question because gender, ethnicity, and low socioeconomic background representation in high-skill technology is terrible compared to society, as in it underperforms society quite considerably. So for example, there are more women than men in the UK. They do way better at school. They go to universities in way higher proportion. Nearly 60% of our graduates are women. Yet, depending on how you count, 18 to 25% of the sort of technology workforce at large are women. And that's a woeful underrepresentation. And that's because our sort of education and screening systems kind of inadvertently lock people out. And I can't see it changing on current trends because there's a danger that AI is now used to automate hiring, and it takes the same broken system and just perpetuates it in the future. So I do think it's time for a reimagining of the way that we identify and recognize people's potential, because we don't do it currently and it's locking a lot of people out.
Right. I'm just conscious of our time, and I'm just going to use my prerogative to get another question in. But on this question about inclusion, about diversity, has any of the rest of the panel got a quick comment on that?
If I may.
And then we'll just take a quick one.
Yeah, so I mean, we're doing really, really badly, and it's not acceptable. I mean, look, we've got maybe 26% of women in tech jobs in the UK, only 5% of them in leadership positions. So I think about what can we do about it, right? About diversity, equity, and inclusion more generally. And I think there are a couple of things. One is, we need to set targets, right? We have targets for everything else, so why wouldn't we have a target? 50% gender balance. Those are the sort of targets that I have set in previous roles that I've had, and I hold my teams accountable for achieving those. And we don't outsource that to recruitment or to the D&I teams, and they have to help us. But responsibility has to sit with the leaders who are making decisions about hiring people. Other thing I found that really works is to hire the most senior person you can of the diversity that you're trying to achieve. One of the best things I did at BT was to hire a very talented female leader of AI. What happened? A host of other women and more diverse profiles came behind. So I think we need to think harder about the things. Well, we have to have role models. We need to make sure that they're visible. We need to make sure that people have hope, that they can see that they can reach the highest levels of our organizations. And so appoint the most senior person that you can.
Great. Roshni and Margareta, quick comments on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I'll just reinforce the role modelling piece. I think that's kind of critical so that people can see people like themselves, and then that encourages more people to apply for roles. And I think just linking it to the AI piece, I think this is an opportunity as well from a reskilling and piece going forward as well. So I think it can make it.
Thank you, Margareta.
One last thing just to add to it all. I agree with what everybody said. One of the things that we've done is create an allyship program inside Dell, so that we will sponsor that they have to pay it forward to make sure we drive greater inclusion and greater representation. So it's not an if or we actually have a very focused approach about saying these allies have a responsibility to make sure that they're bringing greater inclusion in all of their teams.
Right, I'm just going to upset the agenda algorithm. I'm going to get one last question. Well, it's going to be really upset. So go on, off you go.
Well, it's on this point. I mean, I've just done the last 6 months I've been sat on the government's Inclusion at Work panel, and we've been evaluating all of the potential sort of diversity and inclusion initiatives that's happened. And the conclusion was the vast majority of diversity initiatives achieve precisely nothing in terms of its impacts on the fundamental issue, which is getting more people into these occupations. And so whilst we can have role modeling and whilst we can have groups and training, if people who are underrepresented still have to squeeze them through broken screening systems, it just kind of doesn't work. And our traditional method of hiring screens people out because they don't have STEM education. If you're a woman, you're very unlikely to have STEM education, or you don't already work in the industry and you can't get in. And so it's time to screen people in based on their potential. And we've done this at Academy, and we've shown 60% of all talent has been women, 70% minority ethnic, and nearly a third from low socioeconomic backgrounds. not by setting targets, but a complete natural byproduct of screening people in based on potential.
We need to make that business case much more loudly and clearly. I'm just going to get a kind of ex-Twitter-like answer to this last question. Have we got Chris Scammell here from Conjecture? Yeah. Can we take the first half of your question? These are sort of, which is, well, anyway, you're going to tell us. I'm presuming you've got it there.
Yeah, I'm just curious where you see AI in 2 years. So a kind of clear prediction of what GPT-5 or the systems could look like a year or two from now. And then if you think the type of regulation and safety measures that we currently have, or even that you predict we have, will be enough for that technology.
Yeah, Margaret, we'll just work our way up the panel. But I mean, I think this comes back to Michael's point that is it going to go quicker or slower than we think it is?
So I think we're at a period of trying to settle things down, right? So I think we're going to see quite a bit more governance coming in place, standardization. I think a kind of a mature approach to ethics, hopefully. I think we'll see some of the pilots come to fruition and they'll be scaled across an organization. And hopefully we'll see a kind of movement away from the shadow AI that we're seeing in organizations that will actually be rolled out in a more formalized approach, right? So at the moment, I think people are using it in pockets, and I don't think it's at scale, but I think hopefully we'll see a bit more standardization. So I'm hopeful about it, but I do think we'll see a maturing around governance, data standards, cyber, and hopefully inclusivity as well.
Yeah, I must say it sounds terrifying, shadow AI. But anyway, Roshni, your thoughts?
Yeah, just my thoughts. I think balance, I think, would be the main thing in terms of, we want the innovation, the growth, but it needs to be within the sort of, responsible kind of governance, sort of thoughtful way of how we implement it. So we don't want to stifle the growth, and we want that, but you have to do it in a kind of a safe environment, especially when you're, a bank and dealing with customers. So I think balance is the best word to describe it.
Thank you. Ash?
Well, the things I'm seeing or hearing about is the very near advance of autonomous agents with agentic AI, which is, things that can carry out a sequence of steps rather than the sort of one shot you type into GPT and you get things in. And this is where systems, I don't know, more trivially might search a travel comparison website and make the booking, pay for the thing. But if you imagine that into work, these are systems that can carry out very repetitive tasks, never get tired, never take a day off sick, never be demotivated, 24/7. And, we're seeing some of these developments already happening. So I don't know, I think my hunch on where this is going in the next couple of years is quite powerful agentic AI systems making its way into the workplace.
Adrian, I'm just thinking about that. Never demotivated, never take a day off. I'm really screwed on that basis. Adrian, how do you feel about that two-year picture?
The two-year picture, I'm very optimistic about the next 2 years. I think we're way behind in terms of adoption in the UK. I think we had the AI Safety Summit, right? We're focused on existential risk of biosecurity and cybersecurity. Yes, great, good. But one of the biggest risks that I see is actually the risk that we don't actually get behind this and adopt in safe and ethical and trustworthy. I think it's an existential opportunity. Yeah. One in 5 days in the public sector, the government, admit to this, is wasted. 20% of on average, civil service is wasted. Our productivity, to Ash's point, we're at the bottom of the OECD charts. This is a real opportunity for us to get behind. Why don't we have, a head of AI adoption in the UK? We had a head of AI safety, brilliant, that, we must do that. But who's fixating, across the public and private sector to really drive adoption? And how do we get more people on boards, right, to understand the opportunity and to give, our teams the oxygen, the encouragement and the support that they need? And then on a technical level, I think we'll see improvements in software engineering. To Michael's point, this brute force that we saw over the last couple of years, we're going to need to get much better at software engineering. And that's where I think we'll see the advances on a technical level.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the panel. It's interesting on that. You say that. I was reading how Dubai have just appointed a Secretary of State level position for AI. First in the world.
Algorithm or a real person?
Well, yeah. When we meet them in person, I'll be able to be the first to tell you. Thanks very much to our panel. Big round of applause. Thank you. Excellent job. Great. You're coming there. Right, we move on to, thank you very much to the panel there. a great next session to follow that really inspiring panel, because I'm delighted to hand over now to a great friend, Jimmy McLaughlin, who's the host of Jimmy's Jobs of the Future, podcast created to explore the future of the economy through the prism of jobs. He's a man that knows a little bit about disruption. He's been the enterprise advisor to at least 2 of the last however many prime ministers we've had at number 10 Downing Street. He's helped, I suppose, shape that relationship between government and business on both a domestic and international basis. He's also a superb interviewer, so please do welcome Jimmy McLaughlin. Morning.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. I'm struck by that because sometimes I get introduced as a former advisor to the Prime Minister, which 18 months ago was a really impressive line. Now it requires a bit more qualification, I find, with people. But I started the podcast 4 years ago, just as the pandemic was happening, partly because I was thinking about how we help train people for the skills of the future. And I thought back to a conversation that I used to have at number 10, is it used to be my job to go and tell the Prime Minister that Debenhams were making 10,000 redundancies or so on. And her response at the time was, we're at record high employment, where are all these jobs coming from? And it's actually the fact that it's entrepreneurs that are creating 2 or 3 jobs every single week. And that doesn't get coverage because they don't make a jobs announcement like Debenhams or Wilkinson's do when they do. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Saul Klein, who is responsible for assisting a lot of entrepreneurs with what they need in terms of financial capital. We're here in his house. I almost think this is like your house, Saul. Please welcome to the stage, Saul Klein. And as we know with AI, it's going to be a huge part of what can be achieved, and what we need to safeguard against is going to be the role of government and what government does. And I can assure you that not all political advisors are as advanced as Michael in their understanding of it. So we have a separate office for AI, which other guests used to head up today. So Sana, please welcome to the stage. So when it comes to employment, I was struck by, it's very easy to kind of be in your podcast ivory tower talking about these things. A year ago, we went out and surveyed the British public about how they thought about AI. And one of the things that struck me was that 1 in 3 in 5 years' time believe that their job could be done by AI, which when you think about the entire workforce, that's over 10 million people in the United Kingdom. That is a huge change in our economic model and everything. And people at the moment, I don't think, are quite appreciating that. So what do employers need to know to take advantage of AI?
So first, thanks for the warm welcome. I definitely don't think of this as my house. I think if I thought of it as my house, my wife and kids would be very unhappy. I also just want to take a 1-minute detour and explain to people where we are, because I think it's relevant to this conversation. So you're in Phoenix Court, which is in Somerstown. So we're not in King's Cross, and we're not in Euston, and we're not in St Pancras, we're in Somerstown. And Somerstown is a neighborhood of about 18,000 people. 5 out of 10 people in Somerstown, kids, are on free school meals. 7 have social care. And an adult in Somerstown will live 20 years less than in Highgate, which is 15 minutes up the road. So I think, one of the things I think it's really important, and is a sort of a not to channel, your former leaders, our former leaders, but this neighborhood is a great example of other neighborhoods across the UK and across the world. And I think the biggest lever that we have in all of this, and Mike pointed it out, is literacy. And it's not even high school level literacy, it's primary school level literacy, because unless neighborhoods and people understand that AI is an opportunity, not just a threat, and there are near-term threats with alignment and safety and frontier models, then we're never going to be able to change the culture of organizations. We're never going to be able to be innovative about adoption levels. So if I had £1 billion to allocate towards AI development in the UK, because £1 billion in the UK is quite a lot of money, although to Saudi it's not a lot of money, to China it's not a lot of money, to the US it's not a lot of money. I'd allocate at least a third of it to literacy.
Specifically AI literacy? Or
AI literacy.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very, very hard to go into a workforce, to go into a neighborhood, to go into a school and say, hey, there's this really cool thing called AI, or there's AI. I mean, when you poll people and you say, AI is going to take my job away, to me, that is demonstrative of the fact that people are not AI literate.
Yeah.
When you look at the science and technology framework, which the UK is the only G20 economy that has one, Pillar 2 is signaling our strengths and ambitions. And we say that only 57% of people polled in public attitudes to science felt that science, not just AI, could generate more work opportunities. We say publicly this should be at least 80%. So we've got an awareness issue and we've got a literacy issue.
Yep.
And I think we need to take that really seriously, because otherwise we're going to make small dents, not big changes.
Sarah, what do you think of what's all saying?
Well, I say +1 to solve. So, I mean, who was talking about tweets earlier? Yeah, I like that. I completely agree. I mean, I think skill sets absolutely central to this, and making sure that we're not just talking to ourselves or to other people who are like us or like-minded, who chose to show up here today, for example, but are actually talking to a broader set of the UK about these things. I think to add to what Saul said, I'm a trustee for the Institute for the Future of Work, and in 2019 they did a review as well, and asked people about, and they asked employees actually about how they felt about kind of AI coming into their companies, and 67% of them were worried about it. And they were worried about it not because they thought it was going to take their job, but because they didn't trust that their employer knew what they were doing. So the reason I bring that up is because what Saul is talking about, skills, isn't just skills for a certain type of person or whatever. It is skills for all of us, right? Right now there's this there's almost a thought that everyone needs to have a degree in AI in order to even be able to sit up here and talk about it, right? And that's not the case, and that shouldn't be the way it is, right? But yeah.
It's one of the things that I sometimes point out to be contrarian about jobs of the future is that all jobs have changed since the start of the millennium in the last 10, 15 years. It's just the tools that everyone is using has changed. I mean, one of my sort of favorite examples is to point out, effectively with the email, we automated the letter. I don't know about anyone else, but I send a lot more emails than I did letters. And so I think that's really, really important. But how can employers actually realize the opportunities? Because it's hard when you're running a business, right? You've got P&L, you've got quarterly targets, all those things, all those pressures. How can people, Saul, step out and kind of create the space and know where to go to understand these things, to upskill their own digital literacy levels in it?
I think businesses, obviously, and it's great to see leaders from Dell, from HSBC, Adrian was at BT. It's great to see, major British companies taking this seriously. But at the same time, I think companies have to step outside of their own borders and take responsibility for the society around them, otherwise known as their customers. And I think, again, customers will not adopt AI at scale if they are not literate. So I think this is a societal issue, literacy. And I say literacy because literacy is before Mike's high school moment. Literacy is, what used to be reading, writing, and arithmetic. So, what is it that we need to do at a societal level? And I would be asking, what role can businesses play, large and small, in their neighborhoods, in their communities, with their local authorities, to make AI literacy more ubiquitous? Because we will never have as much compute as the US. We will never have as much compute as China. We probably will never have as much compute as the UAE or Saudi or South Korea.
Yeah.
So what are we going to lead on? Literacy.
Yeah. That's really interesting point. Sana, you've worked at the heart of government. What's government doing? Talk to us a little bit about the Office for AI. I know that's not where you are now, but just that it may be something that people aren't completely aware of.
So it is no more. It is now called the AI Directorate, as it should be, because it's grown outside of what it was when I put it in place a few years ago. So the Office for AI at the time of inception was a joint unit between the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy and the Department for Digital Culture, Media, and Sport. I was just thinking it was called the DDCMS, but the other D was the department. Right, so it was the Digital Culture, Media, and Sport. Before the digital came along, it was called the Department of Fun. I suspect after digital came, it became more fun, but that's my impression. So we created the Office for AI in order to kind of start to think about how does the UK create room and policy for the adoption of these new technologies that are coming that had the promise of adding trillions to the country's GDP. And the Office for AI had focus around skills, around adoption, and around governance. And over the 5 years that I was there, we created an AI council, which was a group of advisors, of which Adrian, who I can't see anymore, sat on. We absolutely took diversity at its core. We had 50% men and 50% women on our council. We represented all 4 of the UK nations. And we had what I call the triumvirate, which is people from academia, people from industry, and then people who are policymakers. And the idea about that was to there's a lot of agreement and a lot of disagreement on the edges of that. And what I really wanted was to get the best thinking minds around AI into a room to kind of duke it out while we took notes, and then we could, have a united front outward and come up with the right trade-offs and the right policy for government to make. The work that we did in the Office for AI culminated not only in the AI Safety Summit and what's going on today, but also the National AI Strategy, which was published in 2021, the bones of the AI regulation white paper and the response to the EU's regulatory approach, the EU AI Act, the Global Partnership on AI, which is a country by country kind of working together to think about the governance of AI and many, many other things. So that's just a little bit about the Office for AI.
Because that's one of the things when I was in number 10 that we were looking at was the trust element. There is so little that we're going to be able to compete with China and America on when it comes to capital markets and funding these companies as well. But on the regulation and the trust, we are somewhere between a lot of the kind of like key pillars of the regulatory world, which is effectively North America, China, and the European Union, is that actually we've got quite an innovative-led approach to this. So I'm quite interested just to come back to this digital literacy point about how we simplify some of the language, because government, as we've just had there, is a great example of changing names, moving things around, like even people that are quite astute in it sort of can't keep up with everything that's going on. So how do we sort of keep that? How do we keep, because there's a real tendency sometimes in technology and science to sort of use a whole range of language that people don't understand.
The government chief scientific advisor, Angela McLean, first government chief scientific advisor to be a woman. We were I work with her on the Prime Minister's Council for Science and Technology, and we were talking about this issue last week. And she said, and she's a professor in natural sciences at Cambridge, and she's taught a lot. And I think you can see it with Mike. Is just because ideas are complicated, it doesn't mean you have to communicate them in complicated ways. And what Angela said to me, which I really believe, is if you can't explain what you're doing to a 10-year-old, you don't really understand it yourself. And I think Richard Feynman and others who are masters of their domain, really understand this. So I don't think it's beyond one of the world's best communicators. We have a really good track record in communication from Shakespeare on to actually get our heads around how do we communicate this, at least to our population. I think it's about focus and will. It's not about capabilities. And I also think it's not just the government's job. I think it's business's job. I think it's small businesses' job. I think it's investors' jobs. It's the job of everyone in this room. As we pointed out, this room, we're all bought in, pretty much. It's really the job of like the 99.99% that are outside of this room, many of whom we never think of communicating to, like the primary school kids in your neighborhood. So I think, this really is a national mission. We do it or we don't do it. But at the end of the day, you've got to pick where you can win. We cannot win on compute. We cannot win on capital. Fact. Mike, am I right? So what can we win on? Literacy.
Yeah.
Or governance.
Yeah, completely.
If I
Please,
may,
please.
I absolutely agree, and I think the one thing to add to what Saul said in the previous round, which was about the level of adoption not taking off if people don't understand what they're adopting. It's the same thing inside a company. If your employers don't understand what new tools have been added, they won't use it, and so they need to be taken around on this journey. And there has been reviews done. The Pissarides review, which was done by the Institute for the Future of Work, outlines exactly this, which is the level of successful adoption of a technology increases if you bring your employees with you. There's a direct correlation, and it's not just about productivity gains. It's about how much they actually enjoy their job and how many are displaced from those jobs. So I think we have to increase the way that we kind of think about this using technologies like AI or otherwise. Isn't just about productivity gains, but it should be about actually making the quality of work that we do better and more enjoyable.
Completely. I completely agree with that. As a final question, what's the most exciting application of AI that you've seen? You're both right at the forefront of this. So I would love to know what you've seen in the portfolio, perhaps, Saul, what's government used on it. And I know you want to plug an event as well.
I think, while I totally agree with Mike in terms of sort of the amount of time adoption at scale takes, what's really, I think, both exciting and challenging about AI is that, within that IT line that he showed, there are sort of 5 waves, at least, starting in 71 with the microprocessor, 95, the internet, cloud, mobile. So AI is the 5th wave within AI. And there's a reason why ChatGPT went from 0 to 100 million in 3 months, is because, it's a compounding wave. So I think the level of innovation that is currently happening is unbelievable. I mean, from computational chemistry, advanced materials, healthcare, education, I mean, you name it. But if we don't understand it, it all sounds weird or scary. And we've got to sort of, in my view, crack that nut.
Yeah.
I think one way to do that is to stop talking about it as AI. I'm just saying. We should talk about it, about the applications that it is, right? So my favorite, I'll answer your question. My favorite recent example is actually the Department for Transport is doing some incredible things, and they're coming out with their transport strategy, AI strategy, which is incredibly thoughtful and really, really well. They spoke to a lot of people to get that up and running. But they have a number of AI technologies that they're looking to introduce, which include kind of preventative maintenance, which sounds like, okay, well, great. But actually, the amount of money that kind of thing can save and the usefulness of it is huge. So which bit of the highway should we actually be fixing versus this highway is due to be, fixed, or this bit of the track needs to be reviewed, etc. But this kind of using sensors and AI technologies to collect data and actually drive the changes in how we approach things, which is also something Mike said originally, which is, we're when we're talking about adoption right now, it's all at the fringes, right? How do we make ourselves more productive in the office? How do I create a new product with what I have? It isn't about completely turning things upside down. A quick anecdote or story, if I may. I sat around very early days around a table with some leaders from retail, and these were CEOs, and often what you get from very senior leaders, whether it's government or country leaders or leaders of industry, is we do lots of AI, we've used lots of AI, we've always used AI, and so it's great. Okay, thank you. And then they said we've done this forever, and we track what people buy, and we stack shelves accordingly, etc. And in order to just kind of land the point that Mike made to us in 10 minutes and 30 seconds with them, I asked them, what's your level of waste, food waste in your companies? And they said, oh, it's about 19, 20%. It's below the national average. It's amazing. And I said, well, here you have Ocado, and at the time Ocado, their waste was higher, it's at least than it is today. But their waste at the time was at 2%. Where the national average was sitting around 21%. And so when I said that to these CEOs, the kind of penny drop of, oh, so here's an AI first company that's actually changing the way they do everything end to end, rather than just kind of tacking it on. That's a complete, like, if you look at Ocado's business model, how they do things is a complete shift to what some of our brick and mortar retail companies. And by the way, now Ocado's is well below 2% their food waste.
You've got an event.
Yes. So I thought this morning we were going to be talking about we were going to talk about future of work, which we have, but we've talked through the lens of literacy, which I think is brilliant. But the Institute for the Future of Work does a lot of work around the future of work for employees. And one of the things that they're doing right now, alongside partnering with the All-Party Parliamentary Group for the Future of Work to create a regulatory environment, one of the things I think the UK could lead on, which doesn't exist yet, about good work algorithmic impact assessments. There is some work being done by the TUC on an AI workers bill. This is bringing together a lot of things that are happening globally, but kind of in a disparate way. So the UK could really lead the way in systemizing this. One of the things they are doing is creating sandboxes together with employers to understand not just job displacement, but complementarity. So how does your role in a system change when your job is changing? So it's not just you being displaced with new work, but it could be a shifting of your role, either intentionally or unintentionally, an intensification, and so on. So they're doing these sandboxes. They're being kicked off on the 22nd of April. I think it's between 5 and 8 p.m. If you're interested, please go to the Institute for the Future of Work website to learn more.
Great. Saul, Sana, I could talk to you all day. There aren't many people who know more about the future than the pair of you, but we must wrap up there. But I know you're staying around for coffee and so forth. So thank you very much to Saul.
Great. Well done, Jimmy. Cheers. Thank you, Jimmy, Saul, Sana, for that. Just helping me to wrap up. It was quite interesting that when Sana said, well, I thought we talked about the future of work, but then through the lens of literacy. But if you look at the kind of the things that future employers want, they talk about 3 C's. They talk about creativity, critical thinking, curiosity. They also are the 3 C's of actually how we get hold of AI. And actually, I think when Saul spoke about a national mission, I mean, maybe that new literacy is what that national mission is all about. And it's interesting because national missions can be very, very good at galvanizing nations, how people respond to things. The US had one. It had the Sputnik moment. It had Kennedy's calling for the moonshot, not because it's easy, but because it is hard. You know, that idea that actually that there was something big to go for. We had it in this country when Wilson spoke about the white heat of the technological revolution. And that brought something very, very clear that the UK and France coordinated and collaborated on, which was the Concorde moment, supersonic flight, right? You know, that actually it became a national mission, a national obsession. I wonder whether that point about the new literacy is a big part of the conversation that we've been having today, because I suppose it tracks right the way back to what Michael was talking about in terms of that American high school movement, in terms of, well, actually, what does that mean in 2024, not 1964? So it's been a really fascinating conversation where I think there has been a real thread of ideas and thoughts about actually how we get ready for this future and how we make sure that this is a future that a workforce actually gets excited about and can benefit from in a very real way. We're going to have about 20 minutes we're going to have for about coffee and networking, so please do join us for that. In the meantime, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for a great conversation. Thank you.